Welcome everyone to a special edition of Black Man Speak. We have a very special guest on tonight with us, uh, Professor Glover, and the topic I believe is black cotton. You may not. My wife didn't think it was an interesting subject, but I'm telling you, um, if anyone can make cotton fascinating, it's Professor Glover. So we welcome everyone who's going to watch the show live. And if you are watching the show live, please join us on the chat line with any questions you have for the professor. And for those who watch the show on streaming, we will be putting the professor's contact information on the screen. So if you want to reach out to him directly with any questions or comments, I'm sure he'll be glad to hear from you. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, and then I'm going to drop behind the scenes and produce the rest of the show. Go ahead and take it over, Mr. Tommy T. Duncan III,
All
uh,
right.
Texas A&M grad and football player. I know he's very proud of his Texas A&M Aggies.
All right. All right. That's not the subject of tonight's show.
I'm sorry. Go
Good
ahead,
evening.
Tom.
Good evening, everyone. Let's get back to the main screen so we can get started, Jimmy. I think we are off screen. There we go. So, good evening, everyone. This is Tommy Duncan, otherwise known as TD3 for Black Men Speak. We want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. We have a very special guest this evening, author, activist, and minister, uh, the Professor Clarence E. Glover of the Dallas Fort Worth, Texas, originally from Louisiana. And we are very excited to have him back on our show tonight to discuss the value of cotton, cotton's value, our value, how it has had an impact on the American economy, American history, and then talk about where we go, where we may have overlooked some things, and what we need to keep our eyes focused on. So, Professor Glover, welcome tonight and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be with you today.
And for those who are not on the chat line yet, we want to welcome Ms. Tanya on the chat line. We expect a few other folks to come on this evening. So make sure you get on the chat line. Let us know if you have any questions, any thoughts on the conversation today. We have some folks already coming in on the view. So we want to go ahead and get started with the show. So what we will do is start off this evening and talk a little bit about Professor Glover, what he's doing in the community, and kind of where he is right now. Today is African American Cotton Pickers Day, so we're going to talk briefly about that, why that's important, and where that's going to lead us into the future. So I'm going to yield the floor for a couple of minutes so that Professor Glover can talk a little bit about his background. We'll move forward into the great day that we have today, and then we will talk about cotton's value.
Well, thank you, Tommy and Jimmy. I'm glad to be with you today. Today is African American Cotton Pickers Day. Yes, it is. Cotton Monday. Yes, indeed. And I have been in the cotton fields all season. As you can see behind me here to my left, you see one of the many thousands of acres of cotton fields here in Texas that I work and go about in, as well as in Louisiana, but particularly in Texas. And the reason we selected this holiday to make this, I made this a holiday. Yes, yeah, we declared it a holiday, a holy day several years ago. Cotton is planted in the spring and grows throughout the summer and is harvested in the fall. And of course, African American people were the primary cotton pickers because we were also a part of slavery prior to cotton. We were brought to this country, those of us from West Africa particularly, because of our skills and our knowledge. Cotton did not originate in America, but uh, Africans were very much a part of it in Africa. It was called Owu, particularly in Yoruba language. And so the cotton is a very important product, has been for thousands of years in Africa and India and other countries. But um, and uh, and so when we look at the season, we are now at the height of cotton, coming out of cotton season at the height of harvest time. Having grown up on a plantation on a cotton field myself in Louisiana, I'm very proud of cotton because cotton was what my great grandfather raised. It is what sent my mother to school and paid for bills. And many people can understand that those of us who were on cotton plantations or cotton farms uh, after slavery during the Jim Crow era, there were African American men, particularly, who did own their cotton. My great grandfather was one. So my view of cotton is very positive. However, I do understand the negative implication it has both for slavery and Jim Crow. But I'd like to make a point here tonight that even though we were enslaved, cotton was not the first product that enslaved us in terms of the labor force. We had tobacco, we had sugarcane for sugar, we had rice, all along the west coast, yes, the east coast, excuse me, of America. And I submit to you as a point of discussion, once slavery ended, we did not curse rice, we did not curse tobacco. In fact, we still eat rice and smoke tobacco, cigarettes, and so forth. We did not curse the sugarcane industry or the sugar industry. We did, in some way, curse cotton after the end of slavery. And I submit it was not the cotton, it's likened to being in South Africa, if you will, where the diamonds were so important. And I worked with the anti-apartheid movement in the 80s and the 90s with Bishop Tutu when he was coming here and uh, different ones, Alan Bosak and etc. But when those individuals, those men in particular, stopped digging the diamonds in South Africa, uh, in the apartheid industry, I say, do you think they looked at the diamonds and said, these diamonds are dirty, we're not going to, they have no value? No, diamonds had value. So when we look at this cotton that, yes, real cotton, that we look at it and we become somewhat paralyzed as a people emotionally, or we become very resentful of the cotton. But I would like to say tonight, help us to begin to unpack this emotion because it was not the cotton that was the problem, it was the treatment. Just like the tobacco fields, like rice fields, like sugarcane fields. It was the treatment of the people and not the product. The product primarily was responsible for the economic growth of America. We have to remember that uh, prior to the, we had to pick the cotton from the seed. There was no real need uh, for African Americans to pick cotton because it was too laborious. But after many of us believed, and research has shown that African man, because we had to do the work, actually invented the cotton gin, but Eli Whitney patented it, is that the cotton gin or cotton engine then made it possible to do this by machine, no longer needing us physically there to do it. So therefore, we were out in the fields, and the product itself became so important to England that America, having this land, what we call, if you go from Virginia down through Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi to Texas, you have this black land ribbon, if you will, and that was the purest, richest land called the Black Belt, and that's with black belt cotton, black land, and black people producing white cotton. So what we see now is the growth of the Industrial Revolution after the 1790s when the cotton gin was invented. And it just boomed because England, everybody needed cotton, but we were the primary labor force, and we did not get the money or the proper return on our labor. So that's what I want to look at our value, our worth tonight, because if we understand the value of cotton, we'll begin to understand our worth, because cotton is the foundation for the Industrial Revolution and the growth of the American economy here and throughout the world. So tonight, I hope that we can work through this and our listeners can begin to understand. And there's somebody in your family who did pick cotton. I'm still a cotton picker, but there are family members, fathers, grandfathers, great grandfathers, both in slavery and in Jim Crow, and we owe it to them and to respect it, that it was the cotton, now their role as cotton pickers, if you will, even though the term was made a negative term, your old cotton picking this, cotton picking that, and we made it a negative term therein, the people became negatives. So let's liberate the people, understand the value of cotton tonight, and begin to understand our value as we move into this 250th anniversary of America and realize particularly there would be no America today without the African American men and women, both in slavery and in Jim Crow, who laid the economic foundation for the capitalistic industrial revolution we had. And that's another whole subject in terms of what capitalism is and exploiting people's labor for profit and gain.
That is a very good introduction to the subject. It creates a very insightful historical context for the conversation tonight. And, there are a lot of folks out there when they hear the term or the theme or the thesis, cotton's value and our value. And you made a very good point in terms of a lot of people disassociating themselves and or creating division between cotton and themselves because, of course, when they think of cotton, they think of enslavement. And when they think of enslavement, they think of being the victims of cotton. Understanding that cotton can't do anything to them, but because of the history of enslavement in America, most people associate cotton with enslavement, cotton with being victimized as a culture of people. Unfortunately, to your point, we were not empowered by the cotton industry. This country was built on the foundation of cotton and or other industries, but unfortunately for our community, we were more victims of it than being empowered by it. And so as a result, I can understand why a lot of people may not see much value in the conversation on that. So the first question would be is if we're not owning the institutions that are empowering and or building our economy, number one, and number two, if we're not owning our own narrative of how it can build a roadmap to our future of empowerment so that we can control our own institutions and therefore control our own destiny, how do we start building that roadmap so there would not be such a negative connotation with cotton picking?
Well, Tommy, I'd like to go back to my earlier point, and if I'd like for you to consider this in the audience. I said earlier that slavery
Correct.
was built not upon cotton. In the early 1700s, slavery was built upon tobacco, rice, and sugar. I offer to you for argument tonight is that when you look at that, and that we have not demonized tobacco, we have not demonized sugar, we have not demonized rice. Would you agree?
No, we have not.
We have not demonized any of those products, right? And matter of fact, we
I don't think
participated.
I would say we have not demonized cotton per se, but cotton picking. And the only reason that we have demonized that is because we associate that with either one, enslavement, and or number two, sharecropping, which of course, after many of our ancestors were freed from slavery because they were not given the resources that other groups were given, that they were literally forced to go into sharecropping just to survive.
That's true again, but again, when we talk about the product, well, I'm going to hold this point: the product.
Correct. Oh, correct. You are absolutely correct.
I'm holding at that point the product.
Correct.
Now, I have not talked about the cotton pickers yet,
Correct.
or the cotton picking. I'm simply talking about this.
Correct. Oh, absolutely correct.
When I show this product to people, people literally tremble almost, going to convulsions. You get, all of this by looking at this right here.
Yes.
I submit to you that this should not have that type of impact over us as a people. What we should be disagreeable, certainly be upset about is not the cotton, but rather the treatment in be it in slavery or be it in Jim Crow, be it on the sharecropping farms, the tenant farmers. These were individuals who did pick this cotton out this bowl. They got the cotton. There's nothing in the bowl. So that's a good example here. You see, empty cotton here. So the question becomes, there were those who became cotton rich and those then who became cotton poor.
Correct.
So how do we then create the balance? And there were some men who decided, and one of them in our community here, so that we can have a point of reference, was Anderson Bonner, this gentleman. He, after 1865, he was freed here in Dallas, Texas. This gentleman. He was an enslaved African, as you can see, very much in Africa.
Yes.
But he took his knowledge of cotton, and as a result of his knowledge of cotton and his willingness to work, not to demonize cotton or manual labor, he ended up with between 2,500 and 3,000 acres of land in North Dallas, which is today Medical City, going up into Addison, White Creek, all of that. This is
Yes.
okay. So here's our model. Someone who actually did what his great grandson was with us today, Mr. Bonner. So I'm using as an argument and reference that if we look at these models, okay, these individuals as our what role models, and here is one who came out of slavery, and because Dallas and much of North Dallas was owned by African Americans, the Keller family, the Turners, the Anderson Bonners, you know, if we can look at these as our role models and to see how they created a value-based system, if you will, for himself and his family, and that we can duplicate. So we're going to see in a few moments that there are individuals now who are beginning to see the value of cotton, not only in a production level of making some type of product, but also raising cotton. And they are not picking it any longer by hand because now we pick it by machine, of course.
Of course.
But I still pick by hand. Why? Because this is the best quality. I submit to you, and I ask you and the people in the audience, and many of the ladies know what's the best cotton in the world. And you can Google this, ladies and gentlemen, if you like. It's Egyptian cotton. And if
Yes.
you were to Google why is Egyptian cotton the best cotton in the world, it is because it is hand-picked. And why? What is the difference between hand-picked cotton and machine picked? When a machine picks a cotton, it picks all of this trash and all of this stalk that you see. It grabs the stalk. But in hand-picked cotton, and I'm showing something tonight that most of us have never seen, when the buyers, or when you look at cotton, it may seem very insignificant to you, but this is called the length of the cotton. And a good cotton man in the market back in the day, he could pull that cotton and see how long that thread was. Thread, you see?
Yes,
It
sir.
would determine the quality using terms like, have you heard anybody say, oh, how you doing today? Fair to middling.
Yes. Yes.
Those are cotton terms. The cotton is either what? Fair or middling.
Okay.
Now, if I pick more by hand, then I mean I have quality what? Fiber. You understand? That quality fiber makes a quality product, sheets, shirts, which are more expensive. So again, I offer the discussion this evening for you and the audience is that by us seeing the value of the cotton and reclaiming our contribution to that, then what we do is to take a product that still to this day, Texas is still the number one leading state for the production of cotton. The industry is still a major industry in the country. So if we see cotton through the value of what it is, and then get into the industry of cotton, then we're able to generate the necessary revenue to do the things, incomes that we can then turn back into our community, you see, so that we have a product that will forever be around. Let me offer this to you. We often talk about paper money, but every dollar bill, 5, 10, and 20 bills that we spend, they're made not from paper, but 75% cotton and 25% linen. There's no paper in it. So every day we're spending cotton, 75%. For every 500-pound bale of cotton that is produced, that produces sheets and shirts and other things, produces 313,600 $100 bills. Say it again, 313,600 $100 bills. That's value.
Yes, sir.
Back in the day, a man, particularly, and woman, but particularly men, one African American man particularly being very strong, could pick up to 250 pounds in the morning, 200 pounds in the morning, up to two. In other words, he can almost pick a bale of cotton a day. Please listen to Huddy Ledbetter's song, "Pick a Bale of Cotton." His name is Huddy Ledbetter. He was the gentleman down in Deep Ellum who came from Louisiana. He has a song called "Pick a Bale of Cotton." I want us to see the value. Cotton is value. This is my point, sir, tonight. This is valuable. But we must also see our role that we played in making it valuable. And subsequently, because of that value, we should now see our value and our worth in the form of land ownership, production, manufacturing, and all the other subsidiary businesses that come out of cotton. Texas's state fiber is cotton. Texas state fiber is cotton, like the flag. We have a fiber here in Texas. Stephen F. Austin, the father of Texas, who, after his father Moses Austin had passed away, they were getting ready to build the state Republic of Texas, knew something that we need to all hear. He said, and I quote, to the way Anglos coming out of the South, he says, "We, quote unquote, the Anglos could rise out of poverty by raising cotton, but we cannot do it without the slaves," unquote. Therein lies value. He realized that for them to come to Texas to build a republic, to create wealth, they needed the talent. And I'm just saying, it's not just a physical. This is talent. This is skill, machines. And so much happened during the cotton industry in terms of creating industry. And like I said, even the cotton gin machine was patented by Eli Whitney. And so, as a result of our intelligence and skill, we made cotton king. And there's a writer that says, if cotton was king, then Dallas, Texas was his palace. Because the largest inland cotton producing factory is down on Trunk Street. That's why we have Big D Cotton without us. Dallas was the largest inland cotton exchange in the country. The plows that were used were built in the building where we see President Kennedy's book depository down on Elm Street. Elm Street was the cotton market. So when we began to really explore the value, as we're going to see in a minute, with the video that we have of Lonnie and others, of Lonnie particularly, we're going to begin to see that cotton is not just some for me, I don't understand how someone can take cotton, or even take a person who is a cotton picker and make them or the product something negative.
Understood. So, given that some of our parents, some of our grandparents, definitely our grandparents, touched cotton, managed cotton, acres of cotton when they were coming up. We were much more of an agrarian society at that point in time. And I'm not exactly sure what's happening here, but let me try this again. We were much more of an agrarian society, and the majority of our ancestors lived in rural areas. We have become a lot more urban now because, of course, we have moved to cities to find jobs and opportunities when, of course, the country transitioned from a more agrarian society to a more industrial and now to more of a technology-based society. So a lot of our younger people, that being Generation X, especially millennials and Gen Z, the youngers, don't really have an understanding or an association with cotton, the opportunities there, with the exception of those who may be in farming or who may grew up in farming. So I think there may be tiers to this conversation when we talk about how you're building that narrative on the value of cotton, our community, and the future. So if we speak to Gen X and the millennials and Gen Z, most of who did not grow up around cotton or farming, how do you build that narrative around that community?
But one of the things we have to begin to realize that those of us who are baby boomers and those of us and our parents before us, particularly those of us, my generation, I'm 70, that we have a responsibility to articulate the history of cotton. We were among the first to get professional jobs, if you will, quote unquote, to enter into tech businesses. And I worked for IBM. There were others who worked for other major
Same here.
companies. Yes, I was in field engineering in the 70s. If I had stayed with them, I would have been one of the oldest managers of IBM. Uh, and so I'm very familiar with the technical world, bankers and friends of mine who went into business here in Dallas and other places across the country. Uh, but I submit to you that many of us at that time, we were really we were running away from, as you said, the country or the agrarian side. Yes, we were. And because of what our parents and some of parents, not mine, many parents have said, I don't ever want my child to be in the farm. I don't want my child to work that hard again. That's what we heard. We poured into our head. I'm never going to go back to the fields. Not realizing that it was, again, Tommy, it was not the fields nor the work. I submit it was the treatment that we were under. And you submit, we are an agrarian nation. What we have done and I realize is that we cannot live without agriculture.
Agreed.
Even though we come to the urban cities,
Yes.
in most ways, we live under the illusion of inclusion in terms of our ability to sort of escape certain things. You see, and I want to tell to the Gen Xers and the millennials and others, greens don't grow in stores,
Agreed.
peas don't grow in
Agreed.
stores, cotton shirts don't grow in
No.
stores. They grow in the ground. Cotton grows in the ground. Food grows in the ground. Chickens and cows are raised in fields and pastures. All of these things. So modernity has really done damage to our understanding of our reality. Our reality is that we are dependent upon agriculture. Without agriculture, there will be no what? Living in the urban cities. There will be
You're
chaos,
correct.
you see? So by
You
us, particularly as African Americans, because we have become disproportionately detached, we still have many European Americans who live in the rural, who have farms and so forth and so on. We have African Americans today who have land, East Texas or Mississippi. We have land. I want to challenge us tonight. Many African Americans still have land in the country
you're
from
correct.
grandmother,
You're
from
correct.
great
You're
grandfather.
correct.
We have it. Let's not talk here tonight as though we don't have any land.
You're
We
correct.
have land. The question is, do we have the desire or the will or the ability to go back and work our land? We see people coming back to the South now. As men in particular, let's talk black men speak. How many black men are ready to go back to the land? How many black men are ready to work? Now, let me give you another connection here. Like my community, my family. Everybody didn't leave the country. We have cousins back on the land, friends. You can work with your cousin, your friend, say, man, we got grandmama's land, but I'm in Dallas. I'm in Houston. Will you help me with the land? Will you help what? Get a tractor. We can till the land. We can raise some food. You see, we can do that, particularly as African American men, if we choose to. Because one of the first things that a man should be able to do is feed himself and clothe himself. If the African American, if we as African American men cannot feed and clothe ourselves, then we basically are fundamentally still in slavery. We are dependent on someone
Oh,
else
I,
for our
you're
for
absolutely
our
right.
sustenance. So let's break this down to
Agreed.
that level.
It is called a job for most people because the reality of it is, to your point, most folks either one do not have a trade, and or two, they do not own land that would allow them to be able to take care of themselves and or their families, to be able to feed themselves and or to sustain themselves and or their family. To your point, you are correct. A lot of our parents, grandparents do own a lot of land in certain areas of the country. But what we also know is that over the last generation or so, a significant amount of that land has been going into the hands of multi-billion-dollar corporations that are taking over a significant amount of that land. And we also know that we had hundreds of thousands of black farmers who were doing the work now. And a lot of that farmland has been either one, voluntarily or involuntarily gone into the hands of large corporate complexes, which leaves a much smaller group of our ancestors and or our community who are managing that vitality that can potentially serve our community.
Well, again, Brother Tommy, so when we look at the picture of the glass half full or half what? Empty.
Empty.
So how do we want to look
Correct.
at it? I choose to look at it half full. I
I agree.
choose to look at the glass half full versus half empty. Because
The point being, the point being is dealing with the facts. How do you take where we are and start discussing the future is the point. Not in terms of where we were versus where we are, but looking at the trend and the trajectory
yes, in the trend,
as to how we're having the right conversation so people understand where we're going and how we need to
our
adapt.
terminology of we, Tommy, often, sometimes, Brother Tommy, begins to stagnate our efforts. We speak in the context of we and what we, subsequently, there are individuals, as I'm speaking to you and others right now, there are individuals who do have land and do have access to,
Correct.
and so we should, when I say we, then those who do have access, then let us talk about what actions they're taking. For an example, when I arrived here years ago, very few people were talking about growing gardens. Very few. I have been a catalyst for planting the seed to uh, to help with the garden movement here in Dallas, in Texas particularly. Okay, I'm not going to go through all the names, but now we see a significant growth in African American men and women in the Dallas area who are now into what, agriculture. If we make that a part of our conversation, we know the very negative. We know the statistics. We know we all know the statistics. We know that. But the question, because it's a story about the little boy and the starfish, where an old man was looking at him. He was picking up a starfish and throwing it into the ocean because the tide was not coming in enough. And the gentleman said, "Son, why are you throwing that starfish into the ocean?" He says, "I'm saving starfish." And so the old man looked at him. He said, "Saving starfish?" He said, "You can't save all of the starfish." The little boy reached down and picked up one starfish and threw it into the ocean. And he looked at the gentleman and said, "I saved that one." And that one can make a difference in our community. We have a video here tonight that I brought. I'd like for us to share it because I think it speaks to this next generation, if you will, and how value is now being found in cotton.
Clothing products are made from cotton from black farmers. Or
So-
is that a specific line?
Specific line. So,
Okay.
when Trump announced the 150% tariffs, it really impacted us. Most of our performance apparel, athleisure apparel, is made from overseas. So we were trying to look to find a domestic partner to see what we could get done here in the United States. And I thought about these black farmers who have lost 90% of their land in the last 75 years. So we used to own 20 million acres of farmland, black farmers. We now only own 3 million acres of farmland, and in the next 20 years, that could potentially go to zero. So we partnered with Bridgeforth Farms, a fifth generation black farmer, and we sourced the cotton directly from them. So the hoodie I'm wearing right now, it shows on the back. It says, "Made from cotton,
Made from cotton,
grown by black
grown by black farmers.
farmers." You know what I
I
mean?
think that's so dope.
So when people buy this product, when they buying this hoodie and they buying that cotton shirt, there's money that's going directly to these black farmers who have been historically discriminated against from the government. And there's some power in it. It's a story of reclamation. People don't understand that the entire United States economy was built off the backs of slavery and cotton.
That's right.
And we're talking about trillions of dollars in today's money that was generated that our people were kept out of. So what happens when we reclaim this thing that was once used to enslave us? What if we use that to save us? You know what I mean? And that's what I've been trying to get people to understand, especially about this collection in particular. I had black people telling me, "Man, the cotton shirt is too expensive." the hoodie is too expensive. It's like, man, you'll go spend $800 on that Louis, you'll go spend it on that Gucci, but you're telling me that this collection that is literally from cotton grown by black farmers that is supporting us, that black dollar recirculates in our community, is too expensive. And that's an issue of how we value ourselves versus the things that we value from other people. Not understanding that we are the sauce and the seasoning. We are the originators of all of this that gets colonized, repackaged, and sold back to us.
Brother Lonnie Smith says, sir, I would like to offer to you a question, Brother Sonny. We were speaking earlier about the Gen X's and the others, and we see a representation of them here. Taking cotton, he uses the term reclaiming, reclaiming. Reclaiming, that's a very powerful statement. Reclaiming that which once oppressed us, to reclaim now for one to what? Empower us. I think that's a very powerful narrative for him in his generation. Although he mentioned Cotton Bridgeforth, the fifth generation cotton, then there's Julius Tillery, another cotton farmer, African American. Then there is another young man by the name of Tremaine Emory with Denim Tears, with another fashion. These are all young men who are now reconnecting back to cotton in these Gen X's millennial generations. There's a new movement, I submit to you. So proud to see it, that I'm living long enough to see it and to have planted some seeds of consciousness. But these are actual young African-American men who are now saying, we're going back to cotton fields that once were used for enslavement and Jim Crow, and we're going to create an economic movement around cotton. We're going to reclaim, we're going to do a Sankofa on them. A Sankofa, we're going to reach back and fetch what we left behind to take us forward. That's what African American Cotton Pickers Day is all about.
Absolutely. And that is what people need to know and understand as this movement is going. And I do deliberately call it a movement.
It is a movement. I want to say to you tonight, the movement is happening. That's just an exhibit. You need to also Google those who are listening, Denim Tears. I saw it the other day. My goddaughter turned me on to this. Erykah Badu. Yeah. My goddaughter, Erica, turned me on to Freeman Emory. I didn't know even who he was. She even shouted out when she had the concert here at Bomb Factory for her. She shouted out, my name and cotton and oh woo. I submit it's going to become it is a movement now. And as they take hold of this movement and realize this new generation that, man, this cotton is money and money is cotton, y'all. This literally is money. 75% cotton and 25% linen. Ain't no paper in it. Your dollar bill is your cotton. Your 50, your 20, that's your cotton.
And most people have no idea.
That's why I keep shouting it out.
Yeah.
This is your money. Go get your money. Get into business of cotton. Cotton is money. And today I just did it with a group of young people at the KB Polk Center. I work with the adults. I talked to the adults today. We had a beautiful program. The African American cotton pickers were there. I think we may have a picture of them. It was a beautiful ceremony of men and women who were former cotton pickers in this area, with young men and women there. If you could share that. And our recipient who was there today, yes, thank you. And you look to me, to my right, I'm in the black, of course. That's myself. That's Mr. Anderson Bonner, the grandson of Mr. Bonner, who's the grandson of Anderson Bonner. There's Paul Allen, the recipient of the African American Cotton Picker of the Year Award, who's also the president, not president, but he's a commander of the Buffalo Soldiers, of which I'm a part of as well, former officer, but owns land in Lancaster and all throughout Texas and Joplin. Mr. Greer, who's a former Marine, and he was, just has rich history in cotton up in the McKinney, Allen area, and Mrs. Pope, from down in Tig. These are just a few of our former cotton pickers, and Mr. Allen was given the Cotton Picker Award of the Year. We got our own award. Beautiful. And you should have heard the stories. We're going to make hopefully a small documentary out of this today from their stories because what I allowed them to do, I stepped back and th- let them talk. It was rich, sir. It was so rich. And not only was it rich in terms of, there were people there, a woman, another friend of mine who has land, was talking to Mr. Allen about her land. Okay? Paul
Yes, sir.
Allen, Goldie Baker talked to Paul Allen. Everybody, they start talking land. You see, there are people in Dallas right here today who have land. I want to challenge us tonight. Let's start talking about our land. Whatever we have, let's communicate. Uh, I've started a group called Sankofa Pioneers. I'm a pioneer of Dallas, Sankofa pioneer. The Glover family came here with the family of George Glover out of Alabama. I just left Alabama there with Allen Glover in 1832, where they built the plantation houses and we reclaimed that name reclaimed. They came here, but what I said earlier with Steve F. Austin, they brought their enslaved Africans with them. I don't say slaves, I say enslaved, not enslaved people, enslaved Africans. We take our names from the Glover, white Glover, European Glover family. George Glover, son William Glover, was the first Anglo man born in Dallas County in 1846. My research has led me to the point of looking and seeing. I just left John Warren records of many men and women who were brought here during slavery. Yes, by those individuals. We have the Glover Pass off of Military Parkway. We have the Glover Cemetery off Military. We have the Glover Park that was found in 1952. So when I came in Dallas in 1970, everybody asked me, "Well, Glover, are you remember that family?" I found out the connection now. Many of us in Dallas don't realize how connected we are to the early history of this city. Oak Cliff was a 7,500-acre plantation. Henry Chris Hines, who worked for William Brown Miller, became the first African American man in America to own his own commercial business, a ferry crossing the Trinity. He was the builder of Joppy, the community. Henry
Yeah.
Chris Hines. We need to know these names. Anderson Bonner. We need to know these names, sir. We need to take and reclaim our history as legitimate pioneers. I'm the only African American member of the Dallas Pioneer Association now.
Tell us a little bit more about that organizational significance.
It is an organization founded in 1875 to begin to keep the history of Dallas's county history, the founding of the Dallas County. We just had our 150th anniversary at El Phoenix on Northwest Highway. When I walked into the El Phoenix restaurant on Northwest Highway, this picture was mounted in El Phoenix. The only picture, sir, with a QR code at the bottom to the history. I couldn't believe. Why would they have this gem? This is the picture. I asked them, could I have it? And you know why? Because they understand the value of who we are. They know who we really are. It's time that we come to know who we are. But also, as I walked into the room, the first person I spoke to, it was so ironic, was a man by the name of Mark Glover. We're the same age. We've never met before, but we were both members of the Dallas Pioneer Association. I know and I accept the reality that my identity as an African American in this country is impacted by where my surname comes from. And most of us get our surnames from those individuals that I don't like to say own, but that that we were part of their family, if you will. Some of them had children by our African American women, therefore we see our different hues, if you will.
Agreed.
So yes, the Dallas Pioneer Association. And that's how I got involved the other day with the Freeman Cemetery. Because when the detective was looking for information, could not get it, as he said, from the city, he called the Dallas Pioneer Association. Because Freeman Cemetery is a what? Cemetery that
Correct.
goes back to the 1800s.
Correct.
They then called me because that's one that I'm a special. I've been with the cemetery since '79. We were the ones got involved with that cemetery. Now there's still some issues we're dealing with the Freeman Cemetery. Yes, over on Central Expressway. But if I had not been a member of the Dallas Pioneer Association, the connections never would have been made. So we do have Mr. Anderson Bonner. This is a Dallas pioneer right here. His descendants today, Mr. Bonner, the Turners, uh, his wife, and Mr. Bonner's wife today, she was a Keller from Keller Springs up there. She was there today at the Cotton celebration, along with Anderson Bonner's great grandson. So what a powerful moment to see ourselves as being the founders. Every road, every tree that was cut, every house that was, every plantation house was, every meal that was cooked during those times. I'm saying to us today, let's reclaim. We know that the treatment was there, but let's reclaim our dignity and our identity so that we can invest ourselves in the economic work like Lonnie Smith is doing now with Bridgeforth Cotton, like Julius Tillery is doing with black cotton. Google black cotton. That's another whole bit. Black cotton. Denim tears.
So, as we have about 15 minutes or a little bit less before the end of our show, I want to kind of focus a little bit on the future and where we've gone. Obviously, we've had a great day with African American Cotton Pictures Day. We've given some historical perspective and context to that. You've offered some in terms of what, but if we look at the trajectory for the future, let's talk a little about that. You talked about names in history that a lot of people, I mean, to your point, a lot of the names that you just discussed, Professor Glover, we didn't know about because, one, our parents didn't know about it, and of course, it was never discussed in our schools, which is where the majority of us learned our history. So, for those within the next generation who need to understand the names, the contributions that they made, the value that they have created for all of Dallas, where do we institutionalize that? Where do we go for that? Obviously,
Well, first of all, we begin with where we are now. You can Google Glover Cotton
gotcha.
and begin to read the various articles of the research I've done there. You could begin doing that. You could begin reading that information. Uh, you could Google from cotton field to love field. Understand the history of Love Field, which is sort of 670-acre cotton plantation. You can Google Anderson Bonner here in Dallas. Technology allows us to do that. I'm doing it now as a
Right,
professor. I'm
right.
giving you assignments as we speak.
Gotcha.
So
Because
now you,
a lot. I mean, I guess to my point, there are folks who will see this video and they'll know who to look for. But there are young people out there who may not know what they may not know, so they may not know to look for the Anderson Bonner. They may not know where to look for the Black history of Dallas because one, unfortunately, it may have not have been shared in their household. Their parents may not have known, and or of course, if they're not getting it from an institutional source such as a school, they're not going to know what they're not going to know.
well, if I might offer this to you, Brother Thomas, so that we've done a lot of shows.
Yes,
One
sir.
thing about me, I do not deal with what we call there's a micro and a macro conversation.
Correct.
In a macro conversation, we lose our sight of our ability to do anything because it becomes so wide. It's like you disperse something so far, you know? It's like
Correct.
you can take this cotton. If I just separate it and keep pulling it, it's going to what? Almost become invisible to see.
You're correct. You're
That
correct.
macro conversation, but if that micro conversation begins to say, what are we doing? We're on Black Men Speak Tonight.
You're
We are
correct.
now speaking. As a matter of fact, I would like, if you will, to open up the chat room with some people with questions because we are
And
educating
the
as we
chat
speak.
and the chat line and the chat line is open.
Okay, so we are doing that as we speak. You understand? That's when I give my time to an individual or individuals. You all are the most important people in my life right now. So let's maximize this question for whatever. We have Lonnie Smith line of clothing. Go out
Yes.
and buy Lonnie Smith clothes that are what? Produced by an African American line from a cotton field where cotton is grown, go to black cotton, you see, pull up Julius Tillery, pull up denim tears. Now we have some concrete things to do. And once we begin to do those things, then we might, I'm not sure who's here listening tonight. You understand? Just as my goddaughter, uh, 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 Erica, okay, shouted out that night. So much has rippled from that night, you see? So what I do is to drop the pebble tonight and let the ripples start.
Absolutely. Makes
You
sense.
see?
Let me do this. Let me recognize a couple of our folks on the chat line who have joined us tonight and thank them for their participation. We have about 10 minutes left. Of course,
Is
Ms.
there a
Tanya is
question?
on the line. Of course, that's what I'm looking for. Miss Elisa Patterson out of the Temple area joined us. Miss Marion Square out of the DFW area just joined us a little bit earlier this afternoon. And of course, our good friend Uncle Asar Kabelan out of the Austin area has joined us as well. No specific questions right now. Just want to make sure that we acknowledge them and thank them for joining us this evening. And folks who are not on the chat line now, which you still have about maybe 7 to 8 minutes if you have any specific questions for Professor Glover before we close tonight's show. Are there black cotton processing plants? That is a question from Miss Marion Square.
No, there are not a lot of plants. Matter of fact, there used to be a mill city in Dallas. There was an attempt to create such a plant, but that's a very, very good question. You know, we call it cotton processing plant, like cotton gins. There are very few gins left. Dallas was the largest cotton gin factory in the nation at one time. But no, there are the cotton that I know. There are certainly the cotton farmers, small as they are right now, but there are not any cotton manufacturing plants in the immediate area. One time, Dallas was surrounded. 1/6 of the world's cotton came from a 150-mile radius of Dallas. So we had a lot of industry at that time, but no industry now. One of the visions I have is that in South Dallas, particularly in Oak Cliff, my dream is to have some subsidiary of the cotton industry in these communities. We need jobs. And we should turn to the cotton manufacturer and say, since we did most of the work all these years, then these companies should be investing back in our communities, you see. And as I would make a joke, I said, we should have a part of Fruit of the Looms in South Dallas. Yes. Making what? All the things that Fruit of the Loom makes out of what? 100% cotton.
Agreed.
Yes. Those are jobs.
For those who want to acquire land, but who did not come from a landowning family and who want to learn more. Okay, if speaking for someone out there who may, I didn't come from a family who owned land, but I'd like to own land and start from there. How do I look for it? Where do I go from there? And where are the opportunities?
Well, when you look at Texas A&M Prairie View, I'm going to start with Texas A&M Prairie View A&M because these are all what? Basically land.
Land grant.
Yes,
Land grant
Texas
institution.
A&M.
I went to
Okay,
Texas A&M. Land grant
let's talk,
institution.
sir. Let's talk. Land
Yes, sir.
grant institutions, correct? Prairie
Yes.
View, particularly most predominantly African American, are built on plantations, like
And,
prisons.
and we talk about somebody like Matthew Gaines.
Do you understand?
Yes,
So let's
exactly.
begin to talk about those things. So yes, go back to our land grant institutions, Prairie View, the extension services offices that we have that we can talk to. Okay. When we look at the state fair, which I'm working now with the president of state fair and others, every year it's not just a fair. That's about land. Okay. That's why those cotton meat, those are those the agricultural stuff and the animals. It's about land, raising something. And when you look at what they do, they talk about raising the cattle, but the state fair is also about raising cotton, i.e., the cotton boll.
Yes.
Okay. So as we close tonight, we can begin there. Began researching those spaces and places in Texas that provides you with the knowledge of land and resources and agricultural ability. I have my plot here in my house. As I've said, people learn about the basics of soil management. Yeah, basics. Understanding not just what composting is, but also what what all the various nutrients that soil needs, what grows during what season. If you're going to be in if you're going to be in animal growing, you're going to be in chickens, or you're going to be in crops.
We
Start
have
there.
another question. We have another question here. How do we break the negative connotation of cotton and begin to celebrate what it meant to the African American community? There's another statement she has here. Serena Williams was in London and they had the
Yes,
cotton
everybody knows
throughout
about.
the hotel, and she got on social media said that it was very negative and she just didn't like it. So I guess the
Everybody
second
knows
part
about
of the
Serena.
comment,
Yes, we all know what happens.
but the first comment is how do we get rid of that connotation? And then she made the reference about Serena Williams.
Again, the we, the micro we, the big
Right.
we, the little we.
Understood.
Uh, I would offer to her to ask her, whoever submits it, first, all of for you people, do I have a negative perception of cotton? First of all, the person who asked the question, do I, the individual? So each of
Okay.
us must ask the question: do I have a negative perception? Cotton and cotton pickers. I'll offer this to you tonight. If I have a negative perception of cotton and cotton pickers, particularly cotton pickers, then we're submitting that we have some sense of a negative perception of somebody in our family, subconsciously. I submit to you that's why we don't call their names. We don't talk about them because to some great extent we are ashamed of them. I submit that as we close tonight, that subconsciously as African American people, we are ashamed of our ancestors. We don't call their names. We don't recognize their labor. We don't in the churches, in the sororities, in the organizations, social clubs. And yet, while we want to say America was built on their backs, we like to use that phrase, but yet we don't want to respect them enough to call their names. That's our responsibility. Every people have had something in life that has caused them pain. Be it the Native Americans and the Trail of Tears, be it the Jews and the Holocaust, be it the Japanese, whatever. But I submit to you that all these individuals have created rituals and ceremonies on which they what? They acknowledge their pain, their history, their ancestors. As we leave here tonight, I challenge us today on this African American Cotton Pickers Day. Let's stop being ashamed of our ancestors. Let's stop being ashamed of grandmama who picked cotton, of great great granddaddy in slavery. Find out who your ancestors are in slavery, their names. Don't just talk. I want to challenge the audience tonight. Find their names, where they picked, what plantation they were on in East Texas, in Mississippi, in Georgia, and Alabama. Because I can tell you tonight, for me, by calling my ancestors' names every morning and recognizing who they are, I've been carried back and I have reclaimed. And it is a cleansing process and a healing process to know that. And everybody talks about what you would have done back then if you had done, or they would have done this, I wouldn't have done that, or I would have died. And I like to leave this with you tonight. It's easy to die, but it's hard to live. Dying is
Powerful.
easy. Dying is, and remember this, ladies and gentlemen. You and I are here because somebody lived, had a dream. They picked the cotton long enough for you and I to be here tonight.
Powerful statement, powerful closing. I don't think that I could have asked you to make a more powerful statement to the audience tonight. So we want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. We want to thank you for the questions that we've had on the chat line. We want to thank most importantly you, Professor Glover,
Thank
for
you for the
sharing
opportunity.
your insight on this most valuable and powerful topic, giving us direction, giving us insight, and most importantly, giving us answers. So until we meet again, my good friend and my good brother, we will thank you for all that you have done, and we will look forward to seeing you again. And to the
Thank you
rest
so
of
very
our
much. I want
audience,
to thank all of you.
and for those of us who may be watching this after tonight's show, make sure you share this information with someone, with everybody, because there was very powerful information and insight that has been shared tonight. And of course, we want to thank you for taking the time to learn a little bit more
Go
about.
hug a cotton picker and call their names, particularly in your church soon.
All right,
Challenge all
absolutely.
the pastors out there.
All right. Good night, everyone, and we will see you back again on Black Men Speak.